Hello, everyone, and wish you all a good morning. My name is Yenuli Ranavira, and I am a research assistant at Arutha. I would like to welcome you all for the launch of Debt.lk, a platform that Arutha has developed to help all of you explore and understand everything that you need to know about Sri Lanka's debt clearly, accessibly, and all in one place. Before we begin the session today, there are a few housekeeping rules to keep in mind. Please keep your mics and cameras off for the duration of the presentation. Please hold your questions till the end when we open for the Q&A session. And when we do open for the Q&A session, please use the raise hand tool. Also, please note that this session is being recorded. To start off, let me give a quick overview on Arutha. Arutha is a research and civic education focused think tank. Our work is mainly focused on tax and debt research, as well as economic civic education, which is where we aim to educate the general public about economic concepts and the broader economy as it relates to their lives. Given that Arutha was initially formed in the middle of the economic crisis of 2022, understanding the role of debt in the crisis as well as the role of debt in the broader economy is really important to us. This is why, along with all of our other debt-related research and publications, we have built Debt.lk. This was not an overnight effort, but something that took us months and months. It was important to us that the general public, as stakeholders of the economy, has access to this data. To move along today's presentation, we have our Director of Debt Research, Umesh Moromodali, to talk a little bit more about Debt.lk, how this idea first came about, why was it necessary, and more, as well as to talk more on Sri Lanka's broader debt landscape. Afterwards, we will have a small demonstration of the website, and finally, we will open for questions. So to start off with, Umesh, the burning question, why Debt.lk? How and why did this idea first come to be, and why was this necessary?
Yeah, hi Anuli, and it's a pleasure to finally we have the launch of the Debt.lk. Uh, so let me go back in few years how this idea originated, not in the form of a portal, but in terms of a need. This was around 2015-16 when there was a lot of discussion about how much Sri Lanka owed to China, whether China was Sri Lanka's largest bilateral creditor, so on and so forth, and whether there was a Chinese debt trap, whole lot of information, right? And I wanted to know, okay, whether this is factually true. And at that point, I was actually a mere undergraduate. I was picking this particular topic to do my dissertation. And I, to be honest, had no clue, just like a lot of people in the country at the time, where to find this data. So I was shooting emails to multiple places, Ministry of Finance, central banks, so on and so forth. Uh, that's how this started, and that's how we realized, okay, some information are with the External Resource Department, some information are with the Ministry of Finance, some information are with the central bank, and these data differ from one to another, and then you don't really have a one single source that provides all of these outstanding loans at one go. And I managed to get some information from the External Resource Department thanks to the Right to Information Act, because that allowed researchers to get the data. But I also must say that they've been cooperative as a government institutions, because some institutions we see, although the RTI given powers, they really do not, adhere or cooperative in that sense. So the idea was then, okay, it took few years to collate all this information at that point, and even then I keep getting confusions which institutions own this debt, what is the conditions of the loan, so on and so forth, blah blah, right? uh, So at that point, I realized probably it would be good to try out to have all this information at one place, because as a researcher, I had the incentive. That was one of my major part of the research, my major part of my work. So I had the incentive and the time to look into those things. But I also understood that a lot of people have their own work and they wouldn't have time to look into all these things on their own because it's very time consuming. But at the same time, you see the other end of the story is that this is public debt. This is the laws that the politicians or our policymakers had taken on behalf of us, and at the end of the day, that burden, is on us as citizens. So I felt it's an important information to share with the public, right? So I thought maybe we could give it a try to make information public as much as we can, uh, as a start, at least to give a list of loans that we own, total outstanding loans, at what conditions that we had taken loans, so on and so forth. So that's how the idea came about. That's the objective of the idea, and basically to understand, okay, clarify things, because there's different people making different claims, and I wanted to provide clarifications in terms of official sources rather than just making the assumptions, so on and so forth. Yeah.
So, Umesh, you mentioned that this data was scattered throughout institutions. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? What institutions had what sort of data?
Yes. So let me, before I answer this question, let me give the context, right? So when we take as any sovereign, any country take loans in multiple ways. What we are focusing today is the foreign loans. Largely, country takes loans domestically as well as from foreign sources. Domestic loans is what you generally call as treasury bills and treasury bonds. But foreign loans are different. Foreign loans sometimes specific to certain project and sometimes provided with certain conditions. And you have sometimes like loans that coming from, in the cases of IMF, which are not really project loans, which are more like the balance of payment support. That in the sense to say, when the country is going through a dollar shortage, IMF comes and gives a little bit of like a small loan to, get on your feet kind of a thing, right? So there are different kind of foreign loans, and these are handled by different institutions, right? So my starting point was, I was directed when I asked this question, External Resource Department was the entity that handles the foreign loans taken by the central government. The word central government here is important because um, there are loans that are taken by the state-owned enterprises that are not technically under the purview of the, what you call, the external resource department, right? And then there are certain loans that are handled by the central bank, so on and so forth. So external resource department had annual reports each year. These annual reports had what you call the commitments for the year and also the disbursements for the year. These two terms are very important to understand. When we say commitment, it means what you had signed, what you had agreed to give. For example, it would say in 2014, China Exim Bank agreed, sign an agreement with $500 million loan to Sri Lanka to build, let's say, the Southern Expressway extending from Galle to Mathur. So that is the particular project loan, but that was signed in 2014. I'm just giving an example to make it very, easier for people to relate to this. Now, in this particular case, this entire 500 million is not given in 2014, right? But the agreement is signed in 2014. That means the loan commitment take place in 2014. But the giving out the loan money happens through multiple years. That's what you call disbursement, right? So you have 500 million, and every year up until this entire 500 million is dispersed, you have what you something called committed disbursed balance, right? So every year, some portion of this 500 is dispersed based on the project timeline. Right, so those two data were available in the External Resource Department annual report, which was very useful. We had to extract those to see, okay, what loans were committed for each year. And in the same commitment loans, they'd given information regarding the grace period, regarding the payback period, regarding the interest rate, and other commitment fees, so on and so forth. But these data were spread across different annual reports, audit reports. Some information provided were not very accurate in certain cases, which were highlighted by the audit report. So we had to cross-check most of this, right? There were also inconsistent formats in terms of the loan terms and conditions. But the important thing is, as I mentioned, there was no central place to handle Sri Lanka's public debt at that point. We're talking about the period from all the way, and in our case, I started working on this around 2015, 16, and up to 2024, there was no one entity. But this was a global problem that was also highlighted by the IMF. So based on the proposal of the IMF and World Bank, this was also one of the conditions of the IMF program. Sri Lanka set up what you call the Public Debt Management Office, or PDMO in the acronym. The objective of this particular office is that it will act as the kind of central institution that will handle Sri Lanka's public debt. So the kind of the missing link is now being established. It's a whole different question whether it's done correct or not, how to go about it, so on and so forth. But as a legal institution, the steps was taken to bring all these in under one institution, and we see, to be frank, some progress on this. We see a quarterly debt report coming on every quarter, again as a part of IMF program conditions, and we see in that quarterly report all the debt data is reported, all the loans taken by foreign countries, domestic loans, and as well as the loans taken by the state-owned enterprises are also recorded with a lot of data. So I think that there's some good things happening on that direction as well. So, but what we do is, even in that case, they provide the outstanding loan balances, so on and so forth. But what we try to provide through this portal is, we have gone back in time and done a lot of archival research to identify what conditions some of these original loans were taken, which are not really there in the quarterly debt report, and those are not designed to give those historical information. Those are designed to provide the information in the current context. So we want to provide the historical information with accurate data to say, okay, when this loan was taken, what was the agreement date of this particular loan, at what rate it was taken, and then and what was the payback period at the time. Yeah.
So, Umesh, some people might think, yes, the data wasn't in a central place, but at least the data was there. So why is it so important for us to bring all of this together? Why is it so important that all of this is in one place?
Okay. That's a very good and an important question, because people the we are not talking about some private data, your bank accounting data having in multiple places, something on that sort, right? This is public information, information that people often consume. What happens when the data is not organized in one place, when there is different classification, these people always misled. People tend to think different things. There could be misreporting. People think, okay, there are this many of bilateral loans, this much of commercial loans, when the classification is not clear, two people might be quoting two different numbers. So that leads to a lot of confusions, right? And then you also have the issue with lack of transparency, undermined accountability, some of the information that doesn't really go out in the way that it's supposed to. And then the public get confused. And then I think I could give a very good example to this. In 2017 or 18, I think 2000, yeah. So 2014, there were few loans that were taken to construct Hambantota Port. maybe a couple of loans to construct the Norachole power plant, and some other loans to construct the Mattala airport. These loans were taken by the Ministry of Finance. So we had seen these loan agreements when we do the research, and those were signed by the Ministry of Finance. But in 2014, through a cabinet decision, these loans were transferred to the respective state-owned enterprise. For example, in the case of Hambantota Port, that loan was transferred to Sri Lanka Ports Authority, citing that the port is owned by the Port Authority. Right? This was not done in good faith, to be honest. This was done, in our view as researchers, was to reduce the central government debt to GDP ratio. So basically, you move the central government debt from the central government to the SOE balance sheet. You did that for the Sri Lanka Port Authority in the case of Hambantota Port loan, and you did that for the Norachole power plant loans for the Ceylon Electricity Board. You did that the same thing for the Mattala Airport for the airport aviation limited, because technically the asset is owned by the asset is in the book of the particular state-owned enterprise, which is not really the way it should be, but it was done. So what happened is when Hambantota Port was leased to China Merchant Port in 2017. I used the word again, lease. That was not really sold. It was leased for 99 years. There was no debt or anything. Loans were there. Loan and lease were two separate things. And at that point, the leasing money, the money that you got by the lease, came to the government, what you call the government account, which is in technical terms consolidated fund. Money came to the government, and that money did not go to the SLPA. So after that, there was a confusion. SLPA went on saying that, look here, we did not get this lease money. Therefore, although this asset is in our book, we cannot really repay this debt by ourselves. This is Treasury's responsibility. This is the government's responsibility. So SLPA, Sri Lanka Port Authority, took a decision. They're like, we are not recording this loan as a liability of us, right? And then on the other hand, Treasury Treasury didn't record this loan either, because for them there was a cabinet decision in 2014 that transferred this particular loan, not loan, actually few loans to the SLPA. And as a result of that, Treasury was like, no, we are also not recording this in our books. So in 2020 both, something funny happened. There were few Hambantota Port loans were nowhere to be found. It was neither in the government books nor in the SLPA books. But the loan was kept servicing. It's been paid to China. So this is not something that China didn't try to hide the loan because they wanted to get paid. So the loan prepayment was done. But in terms of who's recording the loan, outstanding loan, there was a confusion. Nobody wanted to take responsibility. SLPA said, look here, you took the lease money, so this is your responsibility. Treasury said, look here, this is your asset. We had transferred this to you through a cabinet decision, so therefore you should record it. So the technical in the audit report goes as this loan is missing. This loan was not recorded anywhere. So that's what happened. This is one example. I wanted to bring this example today to see what kind of things happen when you don't have debt information in one place, and what kind of things happen when you don't have the accountability and transparency on public debt, and what kind of confusions that it leads to. Right. So the matters are more centralized now with the Public Debt Management Office. But what we are trying to provide is by going a couple of steps further, to allow people to explore what really happened in the past, at what rate these loans were taken, so on and so forth, and by providing it on a thing that yeah.
Yes, Umesh. So yes, I think it's clear that Debt.lk is there to sort of bring all this together and give a clearer picture. So could you elaborate who Debt.lk is for? Who was your target audience when we were first making this portal?
Right. Uh, so as I mentioned earlier, this portal aims to serve multiple stakeholders. Firstly, I want to say the common citizen, because what we try to do mostly is make this data accessible without spending so much time searching for it. Even though there is AI, there could be multiple, sources that it gives. What we provided through our work is to give the solid information in official sources to the people about what they want to know regarding the public. So I think the key is, yes, aim is to give the information to the public, because public wouldn't have really time uh, to do all this, right? Going into this data, in this detail, so on and so forth. So we are trying to provide this at one go. Mhm. Then we also aim to provide this information to researchers, because this information is very much linked to doing research, particularly in the context of current macroeconomic landscape of uh, uh, Sri Lanka, and for the journalists, because often we see this being uh, the public debt information being used. And we often also see, as I highlighted in the previous case, some misreporting, some misinformation, and some lot of confusions taking place regarding the public. So we wanted to avoid that and provide journalists like a one platform. If they want to clarify, okay, how much money we had taken for the first loan of Ambantota, by just simply going into our portal, they can get that information. They can verify at what interest rate that it has taken, and so on and so forth. Then also for the students and for the civil society and policymakers, because as I mentioned, this information one is not at one place. This information had to be verified with multiple sources. And by having this portal, you could have it all at one place without really worrying to clarify or going to other places. By simply going into the particular loan, you can get those information. I think that's important for students in terms of doing their research and having that understanding. And it's also important for the civil society and policy of civil society, because at the end of the day, as I mentioned, these are public debt. Uh, So more transparent these debts are, most transparent this information is, that is a good for the public. That is a larger good in doing so. And that's key. That's when they can question, so on and so forth. Same with the policymakers, both in the government side and the opposition. You can have a coherent discussion when there is more information about it, when there is more clarity, when people understand what's going on, when people have more information. Right. So that is what we wanted to do in terms of this. And I want, uh, yeah, I want to say this is just a start. At this point, we want to launch this to provide the basic foreign debt information. And based on the feedback from whoever uses it, and we intend to expand this to provide more information, more clarity on the things that public would want to hear. So yeah, that's what I think this would be useful for.
Yes, Umesh. So, to move on a little bit more into like the broader debt situation of the country, as we know, we've suspended some debt repayments until 2028. But of course, beyond that, we still do have to make repayments. So, what could you like let us know a little bit? Could we talk a little bit about what Sri Lanka's debt and repayment strategy is?
Yeah. So I think this is a question that a lot of people do really ask. I think a few clarifications we have to give on this sense. We've completed domestic debt restructuring, ISB, International Sovereign Bond, that's a commercial bond restructuring, was completed in 2024, and then some part of external debt restructuring. That means the other creditors that is being done. For example, with China, we completed restructuring in 2024. With India and Japan and Hungary, also we completed debt restructuring in 2024. And next slide. So what we can tell is that there is we've seen the change of the maturity structure, and you will see how it changed after the debt restructuring, because the idea of debt restructuring was arrange the debt repayments in such a way that we pay less now and more later. And the idea is when we pay more later, we would be able to build our economy, we would be able to build our foreign reserves uh, to to manage the debt servicing. Yeah, next one. There is very important few clarifications that I want to give. Firstly, Sri Lanka already started paying foreign debt in 2024, some in 2024, some in 2025. Because there is this misconception, which I've heard from multiple sources. A lot of people ask me sometimes, oh, we are not paying till 2028. That is not true. We finalized the debt restructuring with most creditors in 2024 and 2025. We've already restarted paying them, right? What this 2028 refers to is we are not paying the loan installments for the official creditors. That is for the bilateral creditors such as Japan, China, India, so on and so forth. We are only paying them the interest up to 2028. From 2028, we are starting to pay them the loan installment also. Right? So that is the 2028 stories. It's not really, we are not paying anything up to 2028. In 2028, what you call the capital repayment starts, or other principal repayments. In terms of international sovereign bonds, we are paying the past interest because for a period we did not pay the international sovereign bond that resulted in accumulating the debt. And that there was interest for that period, and that we are repaying right now, in addition to the interest of the other bonds. And other, basically the bond maturities, we have new bonds that were restructured in 2024, and they will start maturing around 2030. You don't see bond maturities immediately, right? And so you don't see significant increase of debt repayments up to 2030. There is some spike in 2028 because we will restart paying uh, bilateral creditors. But in 2030 onwards, you will have a significant increase because then some form of bond maturities will come in. And multilateral debt was never restructured. That means we never stopped paying World Bank, ADB, or IMF. So that those clarifications I wanted to give. Next slide.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll leave at it for the questions. This is just a composition. I mean, I'm not sure I went overboard with the time, so you can make a call whether I should make some comments on this, or we could
Yes,
answer
we
this
can.
along the
We can. I'm sure there's a lot of questions regarding this as well.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Eleni. As you can see, big chunk of Sri Lanka's debt is coming from the commercial side. The third one in third. This is what you call the international sovereign bond portion. This amount increased rapidly after 2000. Uh, Actually, we started first issuing our sovereign bond in 2007, and since then we've issued a lot, and all these bonds were restructured in 2024. So we have a whole lot of new bonds. It's like all bonds are put together into one, and then we created a new set of bonds which are maturing gradually in such a way that Sri Lanka is able to pay. So the key is Sri Lanka build the reserves and the economic resilience by 2030 so that we are able to manage the uh, bond repayments. And then significant part is over to the multilaterals. This number increased largely actually in the recent past because from 2022 onwards, it was only the multilaterals that were giving Sri Lanka loans. because in the time of a default, no other creditor would give money. Definitely not commercial creditors like the international banks or bondholders. Bilateral creditors also did not give money except certain emergency lending from India. So almost all the loans for Sri Lanka came from multilaterals such as World Bank, IMF, and ADB. So this portion became 35. One of the reasons was that. So that's where we stand right now in terms of our debt landscape.
Thank you, Umesh. So I think we are having some technical problems. Until we sort that out, I'd like to open the session for any questions our audience might have. Please use the raise hand tool, as I mentioned before, and we would like to give the opportunity for everybody to talk. So please keep your questions short and concise. Thank you.
Generally, I think we have a
Hi,
few
hi Umesh.
three.
Hi Umesh.
Yes.
This is Karendra. Thank you very much for that introduction and the work that you have put in. I want to recognize the hard work that you and your team have put into this to get this to fruition. I have a two-part question, and let me be very precise. My first part is, how do you hope to make sure this data, like what are like have your settings any SOPs or procedures to make sure that this information continuously gets updated in the months and years to come? I want to understand how this information on the website will be efficacious going forward. And the second question is essentially, how are you hoping to promote this, especially with decision makers at a ministerial level, so that they take this data into account when they develop their budget submissions? Because now the call for submissions, the budget will be in October this year, so already the budget work has started, and many of the lobbying effort has started as well. So I just want to understand uh, your response to those two questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Kavinda. Generally, shall we take a couple of more questions and then answer at one go?
Yes, of course.
Hi, Umesh. Thank you very much. Yes, we all know the huge difficulty of getting information out of government. So it's very good that you have a comprehensive site. Just a question on what is the government doing to keep future debt accumulation under control? Now we had the Public Finance Act that was passed. Then there's also talk of the medium-term fiscal framework to try to keep overall spending and revenues in line. But how far has I'm not in touch much. So, but how far have these things got implemented? And how do we sort of make sure that those things, so that you don't keep accumulating debt in the future and keep taxing mercilessly to try to balance the ever growing whole.
Thanks, Ravi. I think there were two other.
Sorry,
Nelu,
Umesh, let's take a question
let's take
from
this.
Nelu.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Nelu? Hi. You can
You hear me clearly?
a little broken up. Could you speak again?
Thanks for this initiative. My question arises from a comment made by Umesh on the fact that some data is inconsistent from different sources. I was just wondering how you're going to negotiate that issue when you're putting it on your database and presenting it to the public. How do you deal with these inconsistencies from different sources? Thank you.
Yeah, shall we take those questions and then go for the next round? Yeah, I think on the first question regarding how to update, we'll be updating this portal. We will be updating this portal only once a year, because the reason is that's when the loan commitment data and the loan disbursement data, all of that reports are coming, and that is for the uniformity purposes. So we will be updating this every year. We are not intending to update this every month, because I think that is quite a difficult thing to do, because everything is uh, uh, you know uh, the accounts are prepared for the year in the government, and then so it's easy for us to take all that into account. So every year we will add the new loans that is taken, and we'll update the outstanding loan balance for each loan accordingly. And for this, we will use the data from the Sri Lanka's Finance Ministry annual report, and also when required, right to information request when we need clarifications. On covering the second question, in terms of how are we planning to get policymakers to use this for the budget proposals, so on and so forth. I think uh, what we can do as policy think tank or a civic education platform is to get this out there. We have shared this with multiple sources, and letting people know that this database exists. When the proposals are made, I think a ministry do have access to some of the information, and when those proposals goes to the treasury, those treasury has all this information to make the assessments. So we are just presenting the data that actually subsequently will be lying in somewhere in the treasury. So treasury does have access to this information to make those decisions, and what we can do is to let them know about the access to this database and how they can use it, so on and so forth. But beyond that, I think it's really up to those who are in those positions to make the call and how to use it. On Ravi's question on debt accumulation, I think we are currently, Sri Lanka is having a primary surplus, and we are expecting to surpass IMF targets on the primary surplus as well. So what you are essentially asking more about actually a tax question. Debt accumulation is reducing because we have a primary surplus, and because estimates suggest that we will have a primary surplus more than what is predicted or projected in the IMF program. All those extra surplus will actually go into reducing the debt levels. The reason for that is there is a legislative provision which caps the primary expenditure at 13%. So even if the government has higher revenue and higher primary surplus than the IMF tax targets, government cannot spend those on primary expenditure. They are constrained by that amendment. It's a whole different issue whether that is the correct way to go about it or not. But in terms of how this affects debt, this will affect debt positively by bringing down the debt levels. And I don't know whether this can be done without taxing Mercedes, so on and so forth. I think for me, as far as I can see, big chunk of Sri Lanka's tax revenue will continue to come from the vehicles. And that's an easy way to collect taxes. And people are, in my opinion, is my personal opinion, people are willing to pay taxes on vehicles and then more like a direct tax. So it's an easier tax to collect. So if that bringing in revenue and allowing us to achieve a good primary surplus, so I would say why not? I don't really find much issues with that. To be honest, I'm much more concerned about on the external side, the BOP side, whether we can manage and accumulate in the reserves, and how are we going to face the bond market in 28 and beyond, because our reserve accumulation is expected to happen through raising sovereign bonds after 2028. So how are we going to do that is rather a bigger question that I think government will have to figure out. I think the other question is there was a question on how we mentioned that the data were at different places and there were lack of clarifications. How did we bring this together and what was our criteria to use that, so on and so forth, kind of a question. What we did was actually we cross-checked with the multiple audit reports because each year Ministry of Finance annual report and all the annual report in fact goes through the Auditor General's review. So those provides in detail comments. So we don't take one information when it is presented at one place. We cross-check with these audit reports. In fact, there was a detailed audit report on Sri Lanka's public debt published in 2022. I think I can't remember the exact year, but around that time. So which has given all in detail, all the information in detail. So we clarify with that. And then when we don't have certain clarification, we keep asking questions to write to information request till we get all the answers to specific questions that we want to tick. And then when we report the data, we put all this into a one classification and then present those data. So there is some uniformity in terms of those. So that's how we do it.
Thank you, Umesh. I think we can go for the demonstration now that we've all been waiting for. So let me stop sharing this and I'll share the. So welcome all to Debt.lk, the portal that we have developed to put all of our debt data into one place. So our homepage gives a quick highlight of all the data that we have collected. So we have debt by lenders. And when you hover over each section of this pie chart, you get the outstanding debt amounts of each of these lenders. We have also classified each loan by a sector, whether it's transport, discretionary, or water, and so on. We also have a highlight of yearly repayments and maturity profiles. The yearly repayments represent how many loans need to be completed, which Sri Lanka needs to complete paying it in each of these years from 2025 to 2035. And we also get the maturity profile, that is the loan duration of all the outstanding loans that we have gotten. Some are 1 year, some are 5 years, some go all the way up to over 40 years. Moving on to the About Us section, this is a quick overview on the story of how the economic crisis and Debt.lk came to be and the methodology that we have used to collect, verify, and enter the data. And most importantly, we are at the Explore Data section. The Explore Data section gives you data on all loans based on, you can filter it by lender, by sector, by loan type, and the time duration that you want it for. And please note that all of these subsequent drop-downs will be based on the lender, and so on. Of course, we also have the option to download all of this data into an Excel sheet for anybody who requires that. And a small caveat on all of these data, since Sri Lanka has gone through a debt restructuring, we have, of course, uploaded the data based on the latest available information to us. We will keep uploading and updating this data as and when new information is available on the debt restructuring and the new terms and conditions of those. But of course, it's not just the data. We also want anyone who is browsing through this website to be able to understand and make sense of this data. We therefore have a resource section. This has publications that Arutha has put out over the years, from the quarterly China report based on Sri Lanka China economic issues, and the political economy of debt that our Director of Debt Research, Umesh Moramudali, and our Executive Director, Yolani Fernando, contributed to. We also have articles that Arutha team members have published. Anything related to data, you can find it here. And of course, while you are making use of this data set, we encourage all journalists, media personnel, and any other person to collaborate with Arutha if you ever want to publish a knowledge output. And yeah, I think thank you for sitting through this. I think we can, if anybody has questions on the portal, or if there are any other questions, we can take those now. Yes, Sachin Thana.
Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you all for initiating this. This went through the Debt.lk as well, because I encountered the same issue in trying to find this debt data, and so thank you for arranging this meeting as well. From Umesh, I would like to ask about the restructuring scenarios regarding our bilateral creditors. So I saw Japan, China, and probably Hungary. There we have signed. What about the others, Umesh?
Yeah, I think you're right. All these three were signed, and with India also we have signed. Others are more smaller creditors, and with them there are small things that are, I think, to be rectified. Look, I'm also talking. I'm not in the government, so I'm talking based on
No, it's
information
okay, no problem.
that is
Just want to
available.
get your idea.
But in terms of officially, there are small things that are not completed, which is what is clearly indicated is like in the IMF staff report in the cost review, is that this being in progress. I think those are smaller creditors. That's a small clarification to be done. For example, there are stuff with Saudi Arabia or Kuwait, and then there are some small loans with Pakistan. Those are not major issues, but I think those will be completed within the year. Expectation is that with the IMF also is that it will be completed probably largely within upcoming couple of months or so. Because the bigger issue was at when China and Official Creditor Committee would potentially have disagreements, but I think when Chinese Exim Bank actually completed the debt restructuring first, a lot of those ambiguities, uncertainties actually went away. Then it's pretty much, I think, more or less a smooth process from here, in my opinion.
Thank you, Umesh. One more thing. Now, after this situation, I think last December, 2 rating agencies, I think they lifted our ratings from the RD levels. But S&P, I think they are more concerned about that Sri Lankan Airlines bond, 175 million or something. So now, I think still it's not yet been properly finalized or addressed or anything, because by the news I'm getting, I don't know the inside situation. So will it be a problem not getting the S&P, upgrade? Because for future, I mean, if you are, this is when I talk about 28 only, this will be more like a concern, because now anyway we will not be able to go to commercial borrowing or anything.
Market. I get the question. I also get why the worry about it's a legit worry. In my opinion, I don't think that's a significant worry. The reason is we did pretty well in terms of rating upgrades. For example, our rating upgrades is better than the other two countries that restructured it parallel to Zambia and Ghana. I think so that's a positive sign. I think the S&P, because different rating agencies looks at things differently, but the overall messaging is good. And from what we see with the IMF reports, and then with the policy stability that we are seeing, is that we are moving towards the correct current trajectory. I recently saw that the Sri Lankan airline bond was taken up in the court, and then the government is taking necessary legislative matters. I think this will move forward, and definitely it will be resolved before 2028. I would rather expect this to be resolved within a year or so.
Okay.
It's a 175 million bond. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
think, because I think we have set a good precedent. And also in terms, I think in terms of the key thing here is that the current government has shown, despite them initially talking about matters like alternative DSA, whatnot, they've been very pragmatic in the way they approach debt restructuring. They actually did go ahead with the deal that was agreed by the previous government. They did not make any changes to that. So I think that signaled quite a lot of pragmatism to the market, and market took it well. I think on that sense, I wouldn't worry too much. For me, the worry would come in 2028, 2029. How are we going to approach the market, right? To what level we want to rely on markets, particularly in the context of global interest rates being very high. So that's a separate policy question government has to decide. But in terms of the Sri Lankan bond and the future of restructuring and then the stability, I actually wouldn't worry. I think the signals are quite clear that we are moving towards a correct direction, and think then it will be done fairly well, in my opinion.
Just one small question. Is it okay? One thing. Umesh, now
Yeah.
I just went through this reserve, calculating the minimum reserve thing for for a country. The IMF has set some, it's kind of a formula when you consider exports, short-term debt. Like there's a small equation I read. 15% of that, 5% of this, 10%. So when it comes to Sri Lanka, since we are like more workers remittances is a big portion from our dollar inflows. Whether now it not taking it to our reserve computation, I think it's little bit unfair from our end. So I don't know, maybe I might be wrong. This is just an idea.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot comment on it specifically. I have to look at the specific formula, but I think in terms of what we are looking at is the NIR, net international reserve number, which number is, I think, fine. I mean, we could have a separate chat about this to see what this equation is. I can't really much comment on it
Okay, no
without
problem.
looking at the specific formula. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Umesh. I think Peter had his hand raised.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you. Firstly, my congratulations and kudos to Arutha for this timely and important initiative. As a question, I would like to pose to Umesh is with regard to this site. I believe it is more. It will contain a lot of historical data, but in terms of looking at it from perspective, would there be analysis that kind of also highlights possible dangers along the line, and which will be also important, kind of early warning system within that people will have to take note of. While you sounded very optimistic about the future, but things can go wrong, not necessarily because of external circumstances, also in a very volatile world. So I just like to understand whether you will also in this thing have some space for that kind of early warning. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So first of all, our website or our work in general doesn't involve in what you call forecasting kind of things. But in terms of telling, like, if the government or any way there's danger in terms of policy making, that those will appear in terms of articles in Debt.lk. And then there are significant changes pertaining to the country's debt situation, or if there is like a significant worry that one should be concerned about, we will be continuously putting articles to the website. So in the sense, the database will be updated annually, and it will updated. I think for this year there might be a couple of updates because the restructuring is finishing, and then with the finishing of restructuring, some kind of changing of the data would be there. But in addition to that, there will be articles providing the kind of insights that you mentioned in terms of analyzing things about the debt situation, whether there are significant policy changes on the debt situation and how that will affect countries' debt sustainability, so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Umesh. We are now at the end of our session. I'd like to invite Yolani Fernando, our Executive Director, to give the vote of thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on a Saturday morning. We're very grateful that you give us time over a weekend, which is, basically a long weekend, to come and listen to us and talk to us and ask questions about this very important initiative. We feel, it is vital. We were born during a default, and, we sort of, our entire organization sort of lives in hope that, Sri Lanka never, goes through something like that again. And that is the work that we do. And, we thank you for giving us your time. Please do follow us on our socials and, keep in touch, and have a great weekend. Thank you.